So hello and welcome to our third session of the day, which covers the responsible and ethical sourcing of stone. Of course, sadly, there are still many parts of the world where slavery is still a really big issue. I mean, this includes things like bonded labour, where some families sell other family members and they have to then pay off the loan, and sometimes even their children are involved in that. In other countries, prisoners, of course, are also forced to work in quarries with really substandard accommodation, often with little food and certainly no breaks. And then, of course, here in the UK, there are gang masters in operation running groups of labourers, often recruited from abroad. Again, the accommodation is really, really substandard, and some have their passports, if they have them, taken away from them as well. The Modern Slavery Act of 2015 was introduced to try and help combat modern slavery. It's not just, though, in the UK, but throughout international supply chains. And of course, this puts a big responsibility on companies in industries right across the board to make sure that they comply with this act. And monitoring, of course, all the supply chains and companies that you're involved in is a really, really big ask. And often they rely on smaller companies providing assurances, but in turn, these two may find that it's extremely onerous to really provide this. This is why the Ethical Stone Register was set up to help all sizes of companies working within this industry to really show that they're tackling modern slavery within their supply chains. And there are 3 entry levels on this register that are supposed to really form the basis of a journey that will help companies gain fully verified status. So in this session, we're going to be talking all about the Ethical Stone Register, what it is, how you can get involved, and what the experiences are of companies who are already involved. And to do this, I'm really pleased to say we have David Richardson, who is the Ethical Stone Register Scheme Manager, but also Marcus Paine, the Managing Director of the stone quarry company Hutton Stone. And they're both going to be coming up onto the stage to tell us more about their experiences. So to begin with, let's welcome David Richardson. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. Yes, it gives me a great deal of satisfaction to actually be talking about the Ethical Stone Register today. It's been quite a journey for us, and it's something that we're trying to take companies on a journey on. The Ethical Stone Register is an initiative set up by the Stone Federation of Great Britain, and it's something that we view as being exceptionally important to the stone industry, but to the country and the industry worldwide. So, Susanna gave a very good introduction and almost has stolen my thunder from the first couple of slides. But anyway, we'll cover the ground again. So what is the Ethical Stone Register? It's been designed as a sector-specific ethical and responsible sourcing scheme. There are some more generic schemes that are available that sit around responsible sourcing, but having reviewed some of those and worked with some of those, we felt it was important that stone was dealt with on a specific basis. So the scheme has been set up to allow it to work with the stone companies. And that works for companies in the UK and companies across the world. It's been created in response to the Modern Slavery Act, but it goes broader and wider than that. It looks at a whole range of different credentials within a company's operational performance. And they're things that I'll highlight as we go through the talk. The other important thing is that this was designed as a resource that will work with companies of a whole range of sizes. Again, when we came to the market, we were looking at what was available. And too frequently, what we found was that schemes were aimed at the larger companies only. They couldn't work with what might be described as a small one-man band type of operation. What we've designed is something that will fit all sizes of companies and allows everybody to join in the process. And that's very, very important if this thing is going to actually take hold and grow. These are really just highlighting some of the bad publicity that exists out there, has existed out there, specifically in relation to stone. In some cases, actually quite justified in relation to the bad practice that can exist. Okay, there's articles that highlight the problems where the security in the supply chain gets breached. And this is so important that these issues are tackled when we think about providing clients with a reliable service, with a reliable product for their projects. It's becoming increasingly important that everybody feels confident that the materials used on their project have the right credentials. The Dark Sites of Granite was specifically produced by a Dutch organisation in relation to the granite industry in India. India itself has had a fair amount of bad press through time, in some cases with some justification. However, what we're trying to do here is actually set the industry on the right tracks. So, what does it cover? As I said, it's quite a broad church in some respects because it looks at how a company will operate. And so it will tackle and look at things like the ethical and responsible sourcing. It will look at your supply chain in terms of how you assess your suppliers and the materials that you're using in the production of your product. It will look at sustainability and the carbon footprint of your operation. So this morning's sessions, we were talking about EPDs. These are becoming increasingly important, but they're a factor and a component in assessing how a business is operating when you're assessing them as part of the ethical sourcing register, the ethical stone register, sorry. Health and safety. These are, again, another issue that cannot be ignored. Health and safety and the way a company operates are crucial in terms of providing the confidence that material is being produced sensibly and safely. A component of the sustainability and carbon footprint aspect will be energy consumption. So again, aspects of how a company is operating will be investigated, looked at, and evidence sought to make certain that things are behaving the way they ought to be. Waste impact and water management, all again, very relevant to the production of natural stone. Important aspects that will be considered. And of course, as for any business, anti-corruption and anti-bribery are components that must be considered. As Susanna said at the outset, the Ethical Stone Register has been designed to operate at 3 levels. The first, and what I would describe as the entry level, is the declaration level, which is relatively straightforward and designed to help companies get in at the bottom level and actually start their journey. This helps those smaller businesses in particular that haven't so far addressed issues within their businesses and don't quite understand how they might start the journey, but perhaps are a little bit afraid to do so. So it's based around a 30-question questionnaire. It requires that all of the components are filled in, evidence provided, but it's self-declared in the sense that an auditor isn't sent out to check the information that you provide, okay? But it starts people on the journey. It means that we can start to get people to understand what will be required when we move to higher levels within the scheme. The second level is the verification level. This is where it starts to become far more serious for an organization, and it's the level at which we would be expecting major clients to be expecting member companies to have achieved. And when we talk, or when Marcus speaks later, you'll understand that Marcus is a level 2 member of the scheme. And when he explains a little bit more about his business, I'm certain you'll understand why that's the case. At this level, you have a company audit. At this level, it's independently audited, but the differentiator here is that you can go forward as a company or a company with a material or materials. So a company can get company level accreditation in the process. This allows companies that don't necessarily manufacture products or quarry materials to actually be part of the scheme. So we have some consultants like Zorelmi, contractors and consultants within the scheme that have been accredited. These are the sort of wide-ranging criterion commitments at verification level that a company would be assessed against. I'm not going to go through all of them, but that you can see that they fall under the major categories that I was describing at the beginning that search into the way a company is operating. The current highest level within the scheme is the accreditation level. Again, at the accreditation level, so a level 3 under the scheme, it involves a company audit. Again, this is independently audited. But at this point, really, a company will be taking forward with it materials that need to be assessed. It's important then that the company will display a higher level of excellence than it did at verification level in terms of its assessment, based around the 4 pillars shown in this particular slide. Again, it's not just a response to the Modern Slavery Act, and it's looking at all aspects of how a business will be operating. So it's looking at organizational management, supply chain management, the environmental aspects of how a business is operating, but also social factors as well in interaction with communities. This gives a flavour of the current members within the scheme. So we have members from abroad, from Portugal, but we also have, as I say, a mixture of consultants, contractors, and quarrying companies. And it's important that we have this broad range. When the scheme was developed, we developed it around 4 pilot members of varying sizes and varying different operations to make certain that the scheme would actually work in the way that it was designed to operate. The scheme's been receiving some good press. I know it's what the industry really wants. It's what clients want, but what we're looking for is them to back that up by specifying the scheme as well. It's important for a scheme like this to be getting the weight of the industry behind it. And I know it's something that I think Marcus will elaborate on when reflecting on his part of the journey. So at this current point, we have 47 natural stones. So we can offer through the website the accreditation associated with those materials, giving very specific accreditation and confidence around those materials. Of course, we want that to be more. We want that to increase as we go through with time. We have 15 member companies. We have journeys from both within the UK as well as abroad. So we have companies from India, we have companies from Portugal as examples, and we've been able to verify the sustainability and the supply chain credentials of those companies. We've got engagement at the moment from a whole range of contractors and architects. What we're looking for is real commitments to try and back this as a scheme, to actually make certain that it does find its way firmly into all the specifications for projects out there. And what we're looking at, and we're currently negotiating, is recognition with other international schemes. It's important that we're not an island in literally every sense of the word. We have to take this ethos out to an international stage. It's important that companies working with stone across the world are all following these basic principles. And we're happy to work with other organizations trying to achieve the same goals. Wherever possible, we love to try and reflect and celebrate our successes. And top right, you'll actually see Marcus receiving one of his initial certificates, one of the 4 member companies that were involved in the pilot scheme. Again, Marcus, you can give us some insight as to how perhaps that process worked when you were involved in it. Where are we going? This is the important bit, okay? This is what I'm hoping that you in the audience here are going to try and get behind. We need the industry leaders. We need everybody to get behind this as an initiative, okay? It has to go beyond pricing. It has to go beyond a race to the bottom. What we want here is to ensure that our material that we know and work with is shown to be produced in the right way. We need to provide, and we're going to continue to help the contractors and architects, local authorities, whoever, to actually build this into tender requirements. It's so important that this isn't forgotten about. It's so important that something like this isn't an easy to lose component of a specification. We do want to celebrate the projects that use ethically sourced materials. It's so important that the recognition is given when people are seen to be doing the right thing. And we want to continue to highlight the value in using these externally audited schemes. But that will only happen if people get behind it, start to use it, and see the value for it. And we're working with other trade bodies in other nations to expand the scheme, as I said before. We've got a lot of interest. I think from around the world, people have recognized that what we're doing is the right thing. They're also trying to do the same thing, and we're trying to get together to get the sort of the momentum to make this happen. So here's the plea. Go out there, get on the website, you'll see my QR code in a second. Explore what the Ethical Stone Register can do for you. Join it wherever possible. If you're a company that hasn't joined, if you're a company that needs to display these credentials to your clients, join the Ethical Stone Register. At the first tier level, it's easy, within reason, to get on board and to join us on that journey. Talk to existing scheme members. You've got Marcus at the front. There'll be other people around at the Stone Show today that are members of the Ethical Stone Register. And give us the feedback. Tell us where it can improve, how we can do better, how it can help you to actually take this forward and improve the business. So thank you for that. There's my QR code. Please scan. Please get engaged. You know this is the right thing to do, I'm certain.
David, thank you very much. Before you go, I just a couple of questions.
Yep.
Obviously, the last thing companies want right now is more paperwork.
Sure.
Many would say they're probably already drowning in a bit of red tape, extra red tape now. But is there help available to fill in the questionnaire, to complete the audits? Because it can be pretty daunting.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. With the scheme, we provide actually a very detailed handout and booklet that walks you through the whole process. But there's a technical team available at the end of the phone or at the end of an email that will walk you through the process. Again, a lot of it can be uploaded online now, and the feedback is there. It's very, very straightforward and not a difficult thing to do.
Good to hear. Okay, well, I know you're going to be coming back for a bit of a debate later, but thank you very much, David, for now. And I'd now like to welcome up Marcus Paine, who's Managing Director of Hutton Stone, who will be talking about his experience of being on the Ethical Stone Register. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Here we are. Okay, so it's only 7 minutes. There's only one picture. So thank you to the Stone Federation and the Natural Stone Show for asking me to speak here today. As one of 4 initial pilot scheme members, Hutton Stone Company's journey on the Ethical Stone Register began in January 2017, before much of the recent and varying national and international mayhem of the past few years. For us, a progressive family business based in the Scottish borders, with quarries and masonry production facilities both here and in North Northumberland, the Ethical Stone Register was simply a logical progression, simply an honest moral rebalance on uncomfortable truths that we as indigenous natural stone suppliers had been moaning on about for as long as we could remember. There had, of course, been other schemes that had sought to demonstrate ethical credentials prior to this, But these weren't stone specific and had very high price entry points, so made them impossible for us to be part of. That meant that only the largest companies could contemplate these, and our immediate attraction to this scheme was that it gave smaller companies the opportunity to demonstrate their product and the operational commitment to ethical issues too. To be clear, we live and operate daily in a commercial sector that almost endlessly chooses lowest price over all other considerations. It may be that an enormous amount of fine work is done on material consideration and selection whilst the specification is created, and this will often consider, along with the material performance itself, the abilities and behaviours of the supplier, along with the ethical and sustainable reality of those choices. But at competitive tender stage, it is generally assumed with confidence that the material choice can be manipulated in order to win the project. Because up until now, it is broadly accepted that lowest price gives best value for money as the buyer tries to fulfill their remit. Whilst this also provides suppliers outside of the specification with a gaping door to skim costs and steal another hard-earned specification away from the intended material. To this end, we see ethical and other truths falling quietly to the side time after time. And the problem for us as an indigenous material supplier is that when we have complained in the past, it is mostly concluded that we simply would say that when it comes to endlessly lost specifications, whilst the broader construction industry yawns and rolls its eyes. Let us be clear. At a certain point, every penny that is cut from the price inevitably means that someone somewhere is paying for it somehow. So the Ethical Stone Register was our way of demonstrating our commitment to an obvious moral position, whilst also seeking an audience that actually could be seen to care about it. And it is, we feel, true to say that along with climate crisis issues, ethical sourcing is now finally and hopefully becoming far less of an inconvenient reality for projects to take into consideration. To be clear, we are not saying that anyone particularly actively has ignored these matters before. It's just that culturally, the commercial behaviour route map, we'll call it, generally across the UK, has not had enough reason to embrace them until this point, we feel. We were sold the idea based on the Ethical Stone Register being a unique resource created specifically for the natural stone industry, in response to the Modern Slavery Act 2015 and the issues of sourcing materials responsibly. The project allowed natural stone companies, whatever their size, to offer a responsible and manageable ethical sourcing solution to their clients. So, ever the SME to put our money where our mouth is, and following several pilot group meetings in 2016, we embarked on the actual process of obtaining verification level qualification in early January 2017. And we started on verification level because we felt that the accreditation point for a company of our size was the right point to go in. We were supported through the process by Katie Livesey, who at that time was an Associate Director of Anthesis Group, and our office and general managers, Amy Luke and Ian Black, along with myself, worked our way steadily through the project to verification. As with all endeavours of value, it was not without its challenges. Some upheaval, for sure. Some changes to processes to facilitate capturing required data going forward. Critically, some learning about things that had simply never occurred to us before, and we thought we were coming from a moral position in the first place. But going through this process, it opens you up and broadens you out so that you understand all the aspects of it. So it's a very natural process to go through. Some alterations to policy driven by our learning, the outcomes that we learn. And as is usually the case with as when one puts in place a better anything, what we got was a cleaner, tidier, more efficient, and therefore rewarding improvement to the business, along with the obvious benefits of now being able to demonstrate our commitment to supplying an ethically traceable product. The systems have been maintained ever since, and the data recorded continually proves helpful in other aspects of our business. We renew the verification yet again in 2023, and we note the slow but hopefully steady take-up of the scheme since our early adoption. The only issue then is that most projects, from where we sit, have not as yet altered their position enough from the one that we have seen for as long as we can remember to take on board the value of the ethical procurement of materials. We think most people care if pressed, but they do need the tools to make it stick. The true cost of materials, the whole life cost, and the outcomes they deliver in all aspects of how we live is the cost of the materials. And industry and procurement should be challenged where it continues to brush it to the side. I would say that as a supplier, not being part of the Ethical Stone Register or other similar verifiable scheme says as much to the world about a business as being part of it. The Ethical Stone Register needs industry to accept its responsibility and state its position. And it also needs clients who have the conviction to embrace the whole cost and buy accordingly. We note the scheme has latterly been featured in the Sunday Times as recommended resource for homeowners looking for ethically sourced natural stone. And this follows it being listed in the Architect's Journal as one of their editors' top picks. Perhaps more significantly, the scheme has advised that it's been working with one of the UK's 3 top main contractors to build membership of both the Responsible Sourcing Pledge and the Ethical Stone Register into their procurement process. And frankly, the moment they do, they should be promoted and lauded by all for having the courage of their convictions. It is a funny time. UK policies appear to be increasingly settled on a catchy slogan. As soon as they've thought of one and announced it a few times, it appears to be job done, without providing the infrastructure required to make it achievable. In turn, UK industry is being starved of resources to apply everything they are told they must do. My senses tell me that as these challenges get tougher, people simply lower their heads and cut costs however they can. And inconvenient truths like ethical sourcing of materials and climate crisis yet again slip back into the ether. This makes it all the more vitally important that those that do the right thing and make the stand are promoted and lauded to the rooftops. The challenge then is for more good people to insist on ethically sourced and sustainable materials across the entirety of the UK and globally, and for all to accept the real cost of caring, because as with everything, we cannot have it both ways. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. That was really fascinating. I mean, you talked about there that it wasn't without its upheaval and that you'd learned certain things. And you thought in a way that you were perhaps even more ethical than you perhaps
Absolutely,
proved to be. What was the most surprising?
I mean, I think once you start to broaden yourself and you start to understand the chain reactions of all of your decisions. So you think, well, I dig British stone. So that's pretty straightforward for me, I think. I know all of my employees. I know where they come from. I know everything about everything. But then when you actually look at the chain of the things that you buy, where you buy your PPE, where you buy your pallets, where you buy your packaging materials, and so on, it becomes a fascinating and, well, an interesting chain, and one that gives you a clear sense of the process that you go through to be able to absolutely morally take the high road with it.
And is it just about morally taking the high road? Because you talked about efficiencies that you've made as part of it. Would you say that has been any cost implications on the positive for this?
So it's the same, it's just like health and safety. I like health and safety for 2 reasons. One, because it makes me sleep at night because all my staff are safe. I hope they're safe today, whatever they're doing. But I also like it because it makes my business more efficient, cleaner, tidier, and ultimately it does make it more profitable. It takes investment and it takes commitment, but once you've done that, once you set yourself up as a business in that manner, then you lift yourself above difficulties. And the Ethical Stone Register does the same thing. It cleanses you of things that in the end cost you. The only thing we need to link is that we need people to procure accordingly. Not just say that they care, they have to actually procure, they have to accept the cost of caring.
Okay, well, with that thought, let me bring back David up onto the stage and let's have a chat about that. I mean, the other element that you mentioned, of course, is the seismic changes we've had to go through over the past few years. Marcus, in your introduction, I mean, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID, we've had the inflation crisis, the cost of living crisis. It's understandable, isn't it, that given all the pressures on companies these days, everybody is really under the screw to try and deliver a product which is as cheap as possible. But do you think that ultimately it means that we're not looking at the longer term picture and that actually what is the price that we're fundamentally paying?
There is a choice. If everybody decides that lowest price is okay, well, that's a moral decision. That is a choice. There are outcomes to that choice. And everybody has to be comfortable with that outcome. They have to accept that's it. And if that is it, well, okay, everybody shrugs their shoulders and trades accordingly, and the world goes on as it will. But what we can't do is we can't have it both ways. We can't say we care about those things, but then do nothing about it. So it's just a straight choice. and if we purport to care, then we have to be prepared to put our money where our mouth is.
I think Marcus is absolutely right, but it's also important to recognise that as an issue, the Stone Federation has taken the lead on this one. The Stone Federation has said there is not any more time to wait. There is no time to sit back and expect this thing to happen sort of organically. So the Stone Federation itself has taken the opportunity to drive this forward. And we've been going at this for several years now, and I think Marcus was pointing out we're starting to get the progression and the interest, even though times are difficult. And I think that is because there's value, and I think that's value to the companies that are involved. But it does go broader and wider than that. It's something that we cannot necessarily sleep easily at night if we're not tackling some of these issues.
And not, I suppose, just on a moral ground, but on a reputational standpoint as well. And we see those headlines, John Lewis embroiled in a granite scandal. Was that part of why you thought I've really got to push this as well? Because not just from this moral standpoint, but also from a longer term business perspective as well, you wouldn't want to be embroiled in that.
Well, absolutely. In fact, the John Lewis thing happened 2 or 3 years after we launched it.
Yes.
But I don't see the difference between my reputation and my moral standpoint. They're the same thing. So for a business, I think businesses that are not dealing with sustainable issues now and ethical issues, I don't think that I think in the next decade it will be decided where businesses are. And I don't think that they will last. They won't survive unless we all suddenly say that it doesn't matter anymore. But I think if we carry on as we're going, then smart business needs to get on board with it.
I agree. And I think there's been a parallel tracking between things like ethical and responsible sourcing and the adoption also of environmental product declarations. So EPD are a means by which companies can demonstrate some of their environmental credentials. But again, they're a component, they're part of a tool set that you might have to demonstrate to your clients how you're behaving and what your responsibility or the responsibilities that you're taking and how you're taking them seriously. So I think they go hand in hand. I think they're two items that are becoming everyday talking points for a lot of companies now and clients. Clients are increasingly seeing this as a value point, and it's important to them.
So why then would you say that take up is slow, even though it's steady, but it's still slow? It's not growing at the level that you want it to.
I think it would help if there was some additional legislation that supported these things. I think Marcus has hit upon things in terms of there's a reluctance to get involved with some of these schemes because the value isn't necessarily absolutely obvious, and he's fighting a daily battle against lowest price. I think people need to recognise and understand that these schemes actually do have a real value to them and a tangible benefit. So it's getting that recognition, and it's getting people to listen and back it and come on board, basically.
Do you think the fact that there is this extra focus now on environmental issues and not just kind of modern slavery within the ethical realm, that actually might help more people to get on board, because modern slavery is seen as more kind of in the corners, even though it kind of tentacles that stretch right around the world? But do you think that the environmental benefits may actually make more firms step forward?
I think they're increasingly making a difference. We've just released our first 2 EPDs. Same driver as we did the Ethical Stone Register. Nobody is particularly asking for them, but I tell you, the last 6 months they're asking, or they're more likely to be asking for them now. And if you're a member of the Ethical Stone Register, that's very useful to be able to hand forward at the same point. And the other thing I would say is, we are a small company from the Scottish borders, 40 staff. It was once we applied ourselves, once 3 members of my team applied ourselves, this was not a difficult thing to do. So I would to anybody that is considering it, I would say it's just another form of tidying elements of your business up that's actually quite straightforward once you get into it.
Is there any kind of improvement that you'd like to see in the scheme?
I would like to see the scheme very, very actively promoted. I would like to see the scheme championing main contractors that have the nerve to say it matters and procuring via it. You see, if you look at somebody whose trade is public procurement, for instance, they are tasked, their trade, their skill is to protect the public purse. That is their skill. So they see their job as spending as little money as they can. That is their skill, and that is what they're there to do. But they're not given the broader picture to understand what whole cost is. So it always comes down to the money cost, because that is them fulfilling their remit. And we have to talk about the broader remit and to champion any company that is prepared to say, yes, it matters, and we're going to use it. We're going to demonstrate our ability. The profile should be raised because other companies will follow if they do that.
And just finally, what are you going to do to raise the profile of the scheme further? Do you have a lot planned?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a whole raft of promotional events that we're trying to take the message out to companies within the industry. We're trying, as I say, we're tackling on a number of fronts. We're also trying to get that international recognition, because this isn't something unique to the UK. This is an international issue, and that's how we're trying to tackle it. And so that's part of the remit.
Okay, well, let's hope that it integrated more into tenders going forward. Good luck. It's clearly a really important project. So please give Marcus and David a round of applause.